Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at AWS Inspector versus AWS Trusted Advisor. And this is a favorite sort of game that Amazon like to play is they will talk about a service and then you have to guess which one it is. And they always play these two off against each other because they do sound sort of similar. One's an inspector, sort of like Inspector Gadget, I guess. And then the other one's a trusted advisor, someone that advises you about your account. So let's start with Inspector. So Amazon Inspector is an automated security assessment service that helps improve the security and compliance of applications deployed on AWS. It basically automatically assesses applications for vulnerabilities or deviations from best practice. After performing an assessment, it's going to produce a detailed list of security findings, and they're going to be prioritized by level of severity. And these findings can be reviewed directly or as part of a detailed assessment reports, which are available via the AWS Inspector console or API. So we're going to go in and install this on an EC2 instance, and it's basically going to go in and tell us what's wrong with it. So how does it work? Well, the very first thing you do is you go in and you create an assessment target. You then go into your EC2 instance and install an agent on there. Then we're going to create an assessment template, and then we're going to perform an assessment run, and then we're going to review our findings against the rules. So let's have some fun. Let's log into the AWS console and get started. Okay, so I'm logged in the AWS. I'm logged into the AWS console. The very first thing I need to do is go and provision an EC2 instance. We're going to need this in order to install Inspector on there. I'm going to leave everything as default. I'm not going to add a Bootstrap script to apply updates because we don't really want this thing to be updated. We want AWS Inspector to tell us that there might be some kind of security vulnerability. So just leave everything as default, hit next. Now with tags, let's leave tags off for now because you do need tags for Inspector to work. So I want to show you how it all fits together. So I'm just going to leave tags off for now. I'm going to put this into my default security group. So it's going to go into my web DMZ security group. I'm going to go hit ahead and go and review and launch. And I'm not actually sure if I have this key pair, so I'm just going to create a new key pair just to be safe. And I'm just going to call it my new key pair. And I'm going to go ahead and download it. And that's downloaded. And I'm going to go ahead and launch my instance. You can go in and view your instances. Don't worry too much about it just yet. Let's go over to services, and you'll see that Inspector is in security, identity, and compliance. And this will really help you in the exam because Inspector sits here, whereas Trusted Advisor is more of a management tool. So Trusted Advisor does have some security aspects to it, but it also will tell you how to save money. It will tell you a whole bunch of performance things, and we'll go into Trusted Advisor in a little bit. When you come into your exam, if it's a really security-related question, it's probably going to be Inspector over Trusted Advisor, but read the question carefully. So let's go into Inspector. We should just get a splash screen because I don't think I've ever used it in this region before. No, I haven't. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Get Started. Now, the very first thing we need to do is create a role. I have used it in another region, so there will already be a role that's been created for this, but I'll just create a new role. In here, it says, click Allow to give Amazon Inspector read-only access to resources in your account. If you view the details, you'll be able to view the policy document. And in here, it will say EC2 describe instances. And that will essentially, that's the only permission it has. So it'll be able to describe my EC2 instances. So just so this doesn't have an error, I'm going to call my role Inspector 2. If you haven't done this before, just use the defaults and go ahead and hit Allow. So there we go. My internet's running a little bit slowly. So we've done that. Now it says tag your EC2 instances. And the way it does this is using tags. So let's go ahead and click on this button here to tag our EC2 instance. So I'm in the Manage Tags section. You can go ahead and hit Manage Tag. I don't actually know. Let's go over to EC2 dashboard because I don't actually know my instance ID that I just spun up. So it's this one that's initializing. So it ends in F5C. Sorry about that. I'll just go back over to my tags. So F5C, so it's this one, and I'm going to go ahead and add a tag. So your tag, there's the key and then the value. So we'll say production web server, something like that, production web server, and then the value is yes. So everything that is in production would have the key production web server and then the value yes. If it wasn't in production, we'd have the value of no, something like that. So go ahead and add that tag to your EC2 instance. Now, if we go back over to Inspector, which is in my other tab, I've now added that tag. What I now need to do is go and install the AWS agent on my EC2 instances. So click on there, it will give you installation instructions. Probably the easiest way to do it at scale is using Systems Manager run commands. So you go in and do it across an entire fleet. Because I've only got one instance, I can just click on this one here. And so essentially I need to SSH into my instance and run the wget command, the curl command, and then I just need to run the sudo bash install command, and then that will be it. So let's go do that now. So I'm in my terminal window. Because I did download a new key pair, I just need to chmod it. So we just type in chmod 400, and then it was my new key pair.pem and hit enter. And now I'm ready to SSH. And if you've forgotten how to SSH into an EC2 instance, please check out section 1 of the course where we cover it in both Windows and a Mac. So Mac users, you just need to type SSH, EC2, then -user, and then @ and then we just need to get the public IP address. And so my public IP address is that, and then -i, and then the name of your key pair. So it was my new key pair.pem and hit enter. It will ask you if you want to connect, just type in yes. And then we want to elevate our privileges to root, so type in sudo su and then clear the screen. Now all I'm going to do is just cut and paste these commands in here. So I'm going to install. So I've gone in and downloaded it. Now we're going to curl it, so just go back and curl. And there we go. And then what we need to do is just sudo bash install. Because I'm running at root level, I don't need the sudo, so I can just type in bash and then install. And then that will install it onto my EC2 instance. And there we go. It says complete. And it might take a little bit of time because it installs a whole bunch of different dependencies. And then you can't go in and check it, but I'm going to trust that it works. By the way, just coming back, and this is a security course, it does say optional, verify that inspector agent installation script is not altered or corrupt. So that's where you're going to verify the signature of it. Click on that if you want to go through and verify. I obviously trust the Amazon documentation, but you could argue that you should always verify installation scripts before running them anyway. So I'm back in the inspector window. I've installed my agent on my EC2 instance. I'm ready to go ahead and hit next. Now in here, we've got to define an assessment target. So let's pretend that this is our production web servers. So we'll say production web servers. So this UI can be a bit clunky. I'm not sure why. It's a bit buggy. Sometimes you click in here and you'll be able to see all your new tags. Sometimes you won't see the tag at all. If you do forget your tag, just go back over to EC2 and have a look at what it is. Mine was called production web server, and then the value was going to be yes. And like I said, it's really frustrating. If you hit enter, it doesn't click on it. So you've got to actually click on it. So there we go. I'm going to hit next. And then this is our assessment template. Okay, so this is the really cool thing. So let's call it my production web server vulnerability check, something like that. And of course, I probably spelt vulnerability wrong, but there you go. I always find it very ironic that I've become a teacher, but I really struggle with spelling the word curriculum. So in here, we've got our rules packages. So what do you want to do? Do you want to do security best practices 1.0? Do you want runtime behavior analysis 1.0? Do you want common vulnerabilities and exposures 1.1? Or do you want the Center for Internet Security operating system security configuration benchmarks? And that's really fascinating, actually. Basically, they have the Center for Internet Security have a whole bunch of hardened or requirements to make a hardened operating system, and this will basically check whether or not your operating system is hardened. I'm going to go for common vulnerabilities and exposure. I'm going to run this for 1 hour, or the duration is 1 hour, which is recommended. You can see here that it says that assessment templates with longer durations can deliver fuller sets of findings. So it could even be that you want to go in and take one of your production web servers and just create an AMI of it, and then essentially go ahead and deploy it into another availability zone and maybe even another completely different subnet. And then you go in and run it over 24 hours, and then any issues that you see on that machine, you can assume will be on your web, in your web server farm. So everything is ready to go. Let's go ahead and hit next, and we'll go ahead and hit create. And it's creating everything that we need. And what we need to now do is we've created it. So we've got our assessment template here. And what we need to do is click in here and then just go ahead and hit run. And again, this is going to take an hour. So we've got a success, a run started, and you're going to have to wait an hour for now. Okay, we can see that it has completed a run. If we go over to assessment runs, we'll be able to see our run in here. and you can see that it has 0 findings, and we can go ahead and download our report. Now, I was a bit surprised that it had 0 findings because I haven't patched the operating system. I'm going to go ahead and download the full report, and I'm going to make it a PDF. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that now. If you are generating it for the first time, it can actually take a couple of minutes. It is a 669-page document, so do bear that in mind. We'll scroll down. We've got our executive summary, and it's basically saying that the rules packages was assessed. A total of 0 findings were created. And what rules packages? Well, common vulnerabilities and exposures. So if we scroll down into section 2, it will tell us what was tested. So it's these rules, so common vulnerabilities and exposures. What targets were tested against? It will tell you the number of instances it's actually targeted. So we have definitely tested it against an instance, and you've got the instance ID in here. In 3, there's a findings summary, but we don't, because there were no findings, there's nothing in there. And then in 4, we've got our finding details, but again, because there was no findings, there's nothing in here. 5 is pretty cool, though. It tells you what was tested. So if we have a look at this one, cross-domain vulnerability in the version 8 JavaScript engine in Google Chrome before blah, 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 blah. So you can scroll down and have a read of all these different rules that it's testing. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go and create a master template. Okay, so I'm back in the AWS console. If I go over to assessment templates, we're going to create a master template. And with the master template, what we're going to do is test all our rules. And we're going to do that over a 24-hour period. So in here, my rules packages, I can click on multiple rules packages. So I can add more and more and more. So right now I'm going to add all 4. So we're going to do security best practices, runtime behavior analysis, common vulnerabilities and exposures, Center for Internet Security Operating Systems Security Configuration Benchmarks, etc. So I'm going to do this over a 24-hour period because I want to know that I'm going to get really good data out of this. I'm actually recording this on a Sunday night, so I don't want to set up an SNS topic because it will drive my wife crazy. I'm going to leave everything else as default, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit create and run. That will take 24 hours, so I will come back tomorrow afternoon. Okay, so that has now completed. I can click in here and download my reports. We've got 4 findings, which is interesting. So if we click on findings, we'll be able to see the different findings. So we've got one from the sys operational systems. We've got one from we've got 2 from runtime behavior analysis, and we've got 1 from security best practices. So if we go back over to our assessment runs, we can go in and download and view our report. It does take a little bit of time to download the report, so go ahead and hit generate. And then in here, we'll be able to see our report. So we can scroll down and get an executive summary. For some reason, it's only showing up 3 different rules packages in this report. But we do know that the Center for Internet Security did run because it came up in that other part I was just showing you. So I'm not actually sure why sys isn't in here, but it isn't. But aside from that, we can go through and you see here it says rules packages count is 3. So we've done common vulnerabilities and exposures, runtime behavior analysis, and security best practices. We don't have the Center for Internet Security in here. I have absolutely no idea why, but it has definitely run, because if we go back here and go to our findings, we can see the finding in here. So maybe this just doesn't generate a report. If anyone knows the answer to that, let me know. So it has run against this instance count. We can go through and do our findings summaries. So we've got a findings table. We've got insecure client protocols. We've got unused listening TCP ports. And we've got disable root login over SSH, which we should go in and fix. You can read the details in section 4, and then in section 5, you can go ahead and see everything else that has passed. Okay, so this is what Inspector is. So if you're getting into your exam and you're seeing a scenario-based question where you're installing an agent on your EC2 instance, or where you need to generate reports as to security vulnerabilities, then obviously you want Inspector. Now, we're going to move on to Trusted Advisor. Okay, so what is Trusted Advisor? Basically, it's an online resource to help you reduce costs, increase your performance, improve your security, and also improve your availability by optimizing your AWS environment. And essentially, it has 4 different things: cost optimization, performance, security, and fault tolerance. It has a whole bunch of core checks and then recommendations, and it's split into 2 different service levels. So you've got your basic Trusted Advisor, which mostly just advises you on security, and it does also advise you on some performance issues, or one performance issue, and the rest of it is all locked away, and you need to be a business or enterprise customer in order to unlock it. So let's go have a look at it in the console. Okay, so we've really gone through an inspector in a lot of detail. Let's go ahead and look at one of our other services, Trusted Advisor. So, Trusted Advisor advises you across four different things. It advises you across cost optimization, performance, security, and fault tolerance. And the actual level of which it advises you depends on your support plan. So, if you've got, the basic support plan or no support plan or developer support plan, you won't be able to access this. You need either business or enterprise to be able to access essentially all of the services within Trusted Advisor. But you do get a whole bunch of services for free, so it does check things on your security groups, IAM usage, multi-factor authentication on your root account, whether or not you're getting close to any service limits, whether or not you've got any EBS, public snapshots exposed, etc., etc. And so most of these are security. If you want to view them on a vertical basis, just click up here. Cost optimization is completely locked out. So basically, you have to pay Amazon more money in order for them to tell you how to, save money. Performance is just around the service limits. Security, there's quite a few security points. So MFA on root account, IAM usage, etc., etc. And then in fault tolerance, if we click in here again, you have to pay Amazon money in order to get it. So there are some basic services in here. I guess when you go into the exam, ask yourself, is this question asking me about cost optimization or performance or fault tolerance? If so, then you want your trusted advisor to come in and just, remember something like an accountant. That's a trusted advisor. It has nothing to do with security. If it's a security question, what is it really asking? Is it asking you about installing an agent on your guest operating system and then, creating reports that map back to the Center for Internet Security, something like that? Well, of course, then that's going to be Inspector. But if it's just asking you to tell you whether or not you've got some security groups unlocked or if you've got MFA on your root account or something like that, then that would be Trusted Advisor. So you really need to have a good understanding between the two different services going into the exam. Also remember that you need at least business or enterprise subscription in order to unlock all the Trusted Advisor's recommendations. Okay, so what are my exam tips? Well, if you should remember the difference between AWS Inspector and Trusted Advisor. With Inspector, what we do is we go in and we create an assessment target. We then went in and installed agents on our EC2 instances. We then created an assessment template. So we did a vulnerability one and then a master one. We then performed our assessment runs. The default one is an hour, but you can run them for up to 24 hours. And we then review the findings against the rules, and it generates this really nice PDF report. The rules packages, there's 4 currently. So there's common vulnerabilities and exposure. There's the Center of Internet Security Operating Systems and Security Configuration Benchmarks. There's security best practices, and there's runtime behavior analysis. Then we have different severity levels for rules within Amazon Inspector. So we had high, medium, low, and informational. So what will Inspector do? Well, it will monitor the network, file systems, and process activities within the specified target. It will compare what it sees to security rules. It will report on security issues observed within the target during the run, and then it will report findings and advise remediation. What it won't do is relieve you of your responsibility under the shared responsibility model. It's still your responsibility to go in and patch those EC2 instances, and it won't perform miracles either. Moving on to Trusted Advisor, and this is where they like to trick you. You're going to get a scenario question, and they're going to say, should you use Inspector or should you use Trusted Advisor? Well, if it has anything about installing agents on EC2 instances, then you should definitely be using Inspector. If it has anything around cost optimization, availability, or performance, then you should be using Trusted Advisor. Trusted Advisor also does security as well, though. So do remember that there's 4 things for Trusted Advisor: cost optimization, availability, performance, as well as security. So that is it for this lecture, guys. Hope you had lots of fun. If you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.